Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy this video, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when the next one is uploaded. We appreciate all comments, whether positive or negative, because it is very important to ventilate both sides of any issue. All we ask is that you observe the YouTube community guidelines. We were pleasantly surprised by the response to our previous video on whether Sir Lewis was flirting with the Sky reporter at the Italian GP, or not, and the accompanying poll. At the outset, nobody thought he was flirting, and by the time of publication only 7% of voters thought that he was, with many of you asserting that he wouldn't be so blatant. It's nice to know that this little section of the internet is firmly in support of Sir Lewis, as we intended at inception. We'd therefore like to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. Now, back to the matter of the Mercedes insider blowing the whistle on how Toto Wolff came to betray Lewis Hamilton in Abu Dhabi. It is no secret that there was something odd about how Mercedes dropped their appeal to the theft of Sir Lewis's 8th title, and it was only a matter of time before an insider would blow the whistle. The robbery happened in front of a global television audience of millions and the thousands of spectators at the track. Mercedes had a top-drawer barrister with a formidable reputation, so why did Toto inexplicably withdraw the appeal? Well, it would appear that the stage is being set for all to be revealed by a Mercedes insider blowing the whistle on how it all came to pass. This is because cracks are beginning to appear inside the Mercedes top hierarchy that could ultimately result in the whistle being blown on Abu Dhabi. We are all aware of times when people have acted in a certain way when they've been caught in the moment, but after some time has passed, and they start to drift apart, some unexpected development threatens their unity, they start to bicker, and this ends up bringing about the exposure of their shameful secret. This is what appears to be happening at Mercedes, that in time could possibly result in the leaking of the secret behind their shameful withdrawal of the Abu Dhabi appeal 3 years ago. Since that fateful day, Toto has been so widely reviled and mocked here and elsewhere on social media that we are not going to say much about him in this video, beyond pointing out that prior to the withdrawal we held him in high esteem. We all know that Toto is salty, and he has been bearing the brunt of the public disgust since the withdrawal, while other members of the Mercedes hierarchy have escaped relatively unscathed. But 3 years on, their reaction to Sir Lewis's transfer to Maranello has since put many of them under increased scrutiny, to the extent that we now know, for example, that Bono is a Toto. We know this because of the number of times he has withheld critical information about George's tyre strategy from his driver during races. After the first incident in Canada, there was speculation that the information could have been withheld from Bono as well, but after the second incident in Belgium, it was clear that he was part of the conspiracy to withhold such information from Sir Lewis. The depth of the reputational damage suffered by Bono since then is clear to see on social media. Andrew Shovlin, the Mercedes trackside engineering director, who we have highlighted in previous videos, has also been attracting increasing public criticism this season. Next to Toto, he is Sir Lewis's most vocal public critic, who is always quick to throw shade at him in the media. He's the one who kept telling us how the GOAT's outdated style was responsible for the modern George outperforming him earlier in the season. But of course, now that the GOAT's stretching his lead over George, that explanation looks as ridiculous as the one he gave about George's disqualification in Belgium when they tried to gift him Sir Lewis's victory. To recall, that was when he thought he was gaslighting us by feigning confusion over whether factors like George's weight loss during the race could have contributed to the car's weight without fuel being below the stipulated threshold. Yeah, good one, Andrew. The reputational damage he has suffered personally is best exemplified by Paul Sterling 2610 comments that the Akadis race debrief that Andrew hosts is now comedy gold. It is instructive that Andrew was one of those who led the Mercedes protest in Abu Dhabi, that we now know was conducted in bad faith. Andrew's colleague at the protest was Ron Meadows, the sporting director. This mechanic turned sporting director, with some 27 years' experience in F1, would like us to believe that he did not know that what happened in Abu Dhabi could not have been down to one man's error, or why George's car came in below the minimum weight at the end of the Belgian GP. Yeah, nice one, Ron. So, like his colleague Andrew, Ron's duplicitous nature has now been exposed for the world to see. His deceitful nature, which went largely unnoticed during the gaslighting of Abu Dhabi, has been fully exposed by the gaslighting of Sir Lewis's final season with Mercedes. But here's the thing, not one member of the Mercedes hierarchy saw fit to resign over Abu Dhabi. There wasn't even any public speculation about any of them leaving because of it, unlike for example Adrian Newey over the Christian Horner-Fiona Hewitson affair. This speaks volumes about the Mercedes hierarchy, whose only public reaction, within hours of their driver being the victim of the greatest scandal in the history of sports, was to party like it was 1999. The one member of the Mercedes hierarchy who we know has left for supposedly greener pastures since Abu Dhabi is James Vowles, the then Mercedes strategy director, who has since been elevated to Williams team principal. Well, here's the thing, it is no coincidence that he has become the first crack to appear in the Mercedes Wall of Shame. It's just over a year ago that James became Williams team principal, and already, he and his former boss have recently had cause to lock horns. Yes folks, Toto had cause to slap James down publicly, in the purported defense of Mercedes reserve team driver, Mick Schumacher, because of James's unguarded remarks about him not being worthy of a full-time seat at Williams. Well, we all know how hallowed the Schumacher name is at Mercedes, and how they have been routinely undermining Sir Lewis, in a vain attempt to protect the Schumacher legacy. But how is it that Toto, who had no qualms promoting Kimi above Mick, as we highlighted in our previous video, is now criticizing James for overlooking him too? Surely, that opinion which James must have developed while he was at Mercedes, must have been widely shared amongst the hierarchy. What are the chances that a smouldering James has or will let it be known that Toto may have used similar or worse words to describe Mick as well? After all, Toto in his usual narcissistic way, was more interested in being seen to be defending Mick, than actually defending him. Toto's supposed defense was as damaging as James's criticism, because it centered more around the language that James used, rather than his decision which aligns with his. Ironically, the whole issue was thrown into the public domain at the Italian GP, where Kimi was making his much heralded but short-lived debut, when Schumacher's wife and Mick's mother had a public falling out with James over his perceived disrespect towards Michael's son. Maybe, just maybe, the James disrespect was the catalyst for a Karina who was already feeling salty about Michael's son being overlooked by Toto. That being said, it's unlikely that she will be assuaged by Toto's less than fulsome defense of her son, when he was the one who initially disrespected him by overlooking him as Sir Lewis's successor. Imagine how she would take it, if it ever leaks out that Toto had used similar or worse terms to describe her son. So, let's keep a watching brief on this development. Of course, James was quick to offer an apology of sorts given that Mercedes are his engine suppliers, and Toto used to own Williams. But if James has anything about him, he will not have relished Toto dressing him down in public. After all, he is a team principal in his own right, and Toto could have addressed him privately. So, let us also keep a watching brief on how this relationship develops going forward. Well, we all know that Toto is salty, and Karina will therefore be salty. If you know, you know. So, the second crack in the Mercedes Wall of Shame is Karina, Michael's wife and Mick's mother, who must be salty about how Toto and James have been disrespecting her son. She is acutely aware of all that has been going on behind the scenes to protect her husband's legacy at Sir Lewis's expense, and most probably believes that if not for her husband's unfortunate circumstances, they would not be daring to disrespect his son this way. How long before she starts making public or private comments that leak into the public domain, about how odd it is that these people who did such and such, to protect her husband's name, are now disrespecting his son? What happens if Kimi's crash is a sign of things to come and he doesn't make the grade, but Toto the narcissist is committed to keeping him to protect himself from accusations of poor judgment? As far as Toto publicly slapping James down, how long before a resentful James starts leaking into the public domain all that Toto did behind the scenes to denigrate Sir Lewis? If after reflecting on his sheepish response to the wolf, James hasn't vowed to bite back, then he ain't no bulldog. If after reflecting on the public scorn that James and Toto have poured on her husband's son, then Karina ain't no, well you know what. They all now have the problem of what to do about Sir Lewis and what they have been doing to him behind the scenes. One or both of them could possibly be thinking about how damaging it would be for Toto if information about what he does behind the scenes to undermine Sir Lewis leaks into the public domain. How long before some unforeseen development pushes them over the edge? How long before a whistleblower lifts the lid on Abu Dhabi? Forza Ferrari.